For the time being, though, we're going to bring up another protocol that you are hopefully all very familiar with. I'm assuming all of you here are like very experienced, otherwise you probably wouldn't be here. Synthetics, of course, is a warhorse in the space. If you look at the top volume charts, you always see synthetics atop. And we're pleased to welcome Noah Litvin. Noah.
Hi, I'm Noah. I'm a core contributor on Synthetics, and I'm going to talk through how I think about stablecoin scalability, and derivatives, on-chain derivative scalability of all kinds. To start, I got some good feedback from other core contributors on this. Maybe there's something in here that some of them disagree with. I don't know, but I don't mean to speak for all of Synthetics completely, just myself here. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Synthetics, the project started in 2018 as Haven. It was a decentralized payment network and stablecoin project. 4 years later, it's evolved into a derivatives liquidity protocol. The central core mechanism is a CDP issuer similar to Liquidity, and then market implementation, smart contract derivatives markets implementations can plug into it for liquidity provisioning to issue derivatives of things other than dollars, anything with a price feed on chain. So I've structured this talk where it should be as accessible as possible. It's my first time seeing some of the talks earlier, so I think I'm going to be echoing a lot of the content you've seen already, but I think it's good to work things up from basics. So if the beginning's a little pedantic, I apologize in advance. Okay, cool. So at a high level, I think of this, basically you just have two discrete categories of stablecoins, centralized and decentralized. The way these are designed within them, you could have a more or less centralized or decentralized design. And there's no value judgment here. I use both kinds of stablecoins. They both have their place. But they do seem to be two distinct approaches and designs. Centralized stablecoins, fundamentally, you have a trusted party that's holding dollars, cash equivalents, some sort of liquid asset of at least equal value to the total issuance. It's scalable. It makes sense. The issuers can operate with a sort of borrow short, lend long Ponzi scheme that banks use to finance their operations. Super scalable. It's great. I just find it less interesting than decentralized stablecoins. So with decentralized stablecoins, we have this question of how do we eliminate the trusted parties altogether? That's sort of the spirit of the whole thing. And so the challenge is how do we take crypto native assets that have a certain value, despite detractors saying that crypto has no value, or objectively there is a value. How do we take that and convert it into an asset with a stable price? So the most popular design for this is to use a smart contract to create a collateralized debt position. So the smart contract receives collateral. It relies on decentralized Oracle networks to determine what the value of that collateral is, and then it issues a lesser amount of stable coins. And so you have the value of the collateral over the value of the debt. That gets you a collateralization ratio. So as we all know, the value of crypto native collateral can change. It can go up and down very quickly and a lot. And so what happens when the value increases? Everyone's happy, right? The C ratio increases. From the borrower's standpoint, you run a lesser risk of liquidation. You might be able to borrow more. From the network or the lender standpoint, the system becomes healthier. You have more collateral backing less debt. The collateral can also go down. In this case, everyone's a little less happy. And the solution here is to have a liquidation ratio under which someone else, so there are different ways to process liquidations, but a simple way is when the threshold of a particular loan, the C ratio drops below a liquidation threshold, a liquidator can come in and basically buy up the collateral, buy up the discounted collateral by paying off the debt of that position. That's an incentive for the liquidator. So long as the markets are efficient and there's enough liquidity in the market, this can happen and keep the network healthy. So essentially the market cap of the stablecoin decreases, but the price is able to stay constant. So what happens though if the total value of all of the collateral backing the network drops below the total amount of all of the debt issued? Then we have a problem. We would expect the price to start dropping on the stablecoin itself. So this is a risk for both centralized and decentralized stablecoins, perhaps more so for centralized stablecoins, because they're expected to be collateralized around closer to 1-to-1, whereas with decentralized collateral, you expect it to be over-collateralized. And so this isn't theoretical, right? Like USDC depegged in March when they announced that $3.3 billion were stuck in Silicon Valley Bank that was experiencing a good old-fashioned bank run. So another risk here is that a lack of demand could leave the peg tracking below $1. But for decentralized stablecoins, generally we see the problem go the other way with supply and demand. So the peg can break up as well, right? So historically, liquidity is traded above peg. And if a stablecoin starts trading above peg, even at like $1.01 or $1.02, that's effectively like a 1 or 2% fee trading into the stablecoin. So I think to a layperson, it's like, oh, it's just a penny, it's not a big deal. But with financial products, you're often competing on bips. So even $1.01, $1.02 would be a problem. So how does this happen? Basically, people might not want to take out a loan to acquire the stablecoin. They might just want to buy it. And it's just like any other asset, due to supply and demand. If there's too much demand relative to the supply, the price goes up, right? And so when we're talking about stablecoin scalability, like that's the most like distilled fundamental way that I think about the problem. It's like, how do we either need to reduce the demand or increase the supply somehow. So again, just really trying to boil this down to basics, it seems like there are two things we can think about here. How do we increase the value of the collateral, right? Under this model, that's always going to be an upper limit on the amount of stablecoins that can be issued. We need that buffer for liquidations to kick in. And again, like decentralized collateral tends to be highly volatile in price. So that sets a pretty hard cap on how much we're going to be able to scale this thing. So we could think about how could we increase this, and I think there's sort of two main ways we can go into this. One is we can basically engineer it. Well, it's really just one approach here is like, how do we get access to more decentralized collateral for an asset across different chains through better engineering. So I have something like TBTC in mind here. I don't know too much about their implementation, but it makes sense that you could have some sort of proof of stake network connecting collateral from different chains, and also synthetics teleporters, which I'll get into in a second. And we can also think about how to make the supply go up. And really this is, to me, this is thinking more about how can we increase the supply without introducing commensurate risk to the protocol. Because obviously you could always just decrease the requirements for the C ratios, but then the whole system gets riskier. And so like I have synthetics wrappers in mind with this, so we can get into that. Yeah, so in relation to synthetics specifically, as I mentioned before, it's a fully fledged derivatives liquidity protocol. So there is the core issuance mechanism to generate a stable coin out of decentralized collateral, similar to other projects we've discussed. But the system also allows liquidity providers to extend credit to markets for effectively market making, to exchange the stablecoin into other assets, relying on decentralized Oracle networks to determine the price. But these market the interface for markets that integrate with synthetics is abstract. So there can be spot markets, there can be perpetual futures markets, or other exotic derivatives. It's anything. So as I mentioned before, cross-chain stablecoin teleportation is an example of how we could potentially access a greater base of collateral for a single stablecoin. And so fundamentally what this involves is you burn X number of stablecoins on one chain, you send a cross-chain message to another chain, and then you issue an equivalent value on that chain. And what this means is basically the stablecoins are fungible across deployments, or the debt sort of issued or minted on one chain can be used to repay loans issued on a different chain. So now all of the collateral native to these different chains can all be used to collateralize the same set of stablecoins. And especially as Ethereum's scaling roadmap is horizontal across multiple chains, that's a solution, that's a problem that we'll need to solve from an engineering standpoint one way or another. Cool. Another tool in Synthetic's arsenal for scaling is the wrappers. This has sort of evolved into something I think that's similar to PSMs and other protocols. But in Synthetics v3, we've introduced this auto-rebalancing skew fee. So a synthetic spot market issuing SETH could accept and wrap one native ETH and then issue an equivalent amount of synthetic ETH in a single transaction. And so if there's a floating supply of like 1,000 ETH and there's a, if there's a floating supply of like 1,000 synthetic ETH and we've wrapped 1,000 native ETH, then the protocol effectively has zero exposure to the price of ETH. So if this is off balance, we can use fees to incentivize and disincentivize people to buy and sell the synthetic asset, which relieves the protocol of that price exposure. And this, to me, is more along the lines of the sort of how do we scale the amount of issued debt in a way that reduces that doesn't increase the risk of the protocol because we're losing price exposure. Another strategy here is with perpetual futures markets, and I think this came up a little earlier, where in Synthetics v3, the perpetual futures markets that we currently have on testnet that are under development, you'll be able to margin positions with spot assets. So if you open up a 1x short on ETH in the perpetual futures market and you margin it with a 1x, with an equivalent value of synthetic spot ETH, then you have effectively a delta neutral asset that could be used to issue stablecoins against whether it's synthetics or a different protocol. That asset becomes scalable, and so or that asset will allow us to increase scalability because you have a more stable asset, and the amount we can issue there sort of becomes a function of the amount of open interest on the perps markets, and with all of this stuff, I always go back to like there's no free lunch. So like where is this coming from? And effectively, there's a funding rate in the perpetual futures markets that incentivizes arbitrageurs to effectively like take up the other side of the trade to keep the markets balanced. So like zooming out a couple steps, basically arbitrageurs are sort of using open interest from other exchange venues to balance out the markets on chain, and then that sort of becomes the trick or whatever of sort of where the additional value is coming from to be able to create more delta neutral assets on chain while keeping the synthetic system decentralized. Cool. Okay, so where am I going with all of this? One way to focus this in is to share a tweet that I don't really agree with. I think there are obviously going to be scaling limitations, but I don't think we need to pick only two of these, right? I mean, the trilemmas come up, I think, in both talks before me. There are definitely limitations, but I think we still have a long way to go with better engineering to scale better with what we have available to us. Centralized stablecoins are always going to be more scalable than decentralized stablecoins. Like Liquidity's market cap, the LUSD market cap can't be greater than the market cap of ETH. USDC's market cap has been an order of magnitude greater than ETH's in the past. But again, I still think there's still a lot of progress we can make here. And also over time, crypto native assets are going to increase in value as the demand for stablecoins and more people are doing things on chain. It makes sense to me that crypto native assets will also scale in value, sort of creating a flywheel, allowing scalability to increase over time. So yeah, like the wrapped basis trade thing with the perps market, I think it's super clever. I wouldn't have come up with that on my own. Maybe there are other clever things we can do with more exotic types of derivatives markets. I don't know. It feels to me like we're still early. But yeah, I just close by saying I think that the DeFi community should sort of focus efforts on coming up with more things along these lines rather than coming up with more elaborate fiat-backed centralized stablecoin designs. Thanks.
Yep, thanks. Thanks for raising the delta neutral topic again. Do you actually see across the market the developments in DEXs and the perps, and specifically in Verbs, perps, because for this delta neutral strategy to be effective, you need inverse perps across the board. So I know that I believe in V3, which is to be rolled out, you'll have the inverse perps already. I think so. But have you seen these like developments on other protocols and other DEXs? You think this market is going to grow? What's your take on that? Because it's like key for scalability of this project, obviously, for the delta neutral via perps.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding of other attempts at this have been limited by the maturity and success of decentralized on-chain perps markets. So Synthetics is also building those. So basically, like, if we're running into scalability issues on the stablecoin front because there's something wrong with the perps markets, or we can do better with the perps markets, like that effort's also underway.
Questions? Doesn't sound like it. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your wristband. And right now, okay. Crypto Pass. All right, everyone, just a quick announcement of what's going on upstairs. There's a Crypto Pass workshop going on where they're going to be talking about MiCA, the digital currency regulations, and EU compliance. So please check that out. If you want to stay down here, of course, we promised at Stablecoin Summit's big brains, and I don't think we've disappointed yet. But if you'd like to